right. Well, welcome to another movie review stream. My name is Mark McPherson, film critic for movieswithmark.com, TwinCitiesGeek.com, and filminquiry.com. And we are currently in September right now, so we're coming up on award season here. We're getting close, just getting very close to the fall season. And we got a few big films that we've got to cover. It's been quite a while. It's been a bit. I don't know if anyone noticed, but I got new glasses technically, so now there's no longer that weird chipping at the side there. All right, so what do we got? We got a lot on deck that we got to talk about today. We're going to talk about the latest Alien film that came out last month, Alien Romulus. And then, of course, the new film coming out this week and we got to talk about is Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, the sequel to the Tim Burton classic, also directed by Tim Burton. What else we got? We are also going to talk, another one I wanted to talk about here was a film called Daughters, which is a documentary that dropped on Netflix, which is one I've been wanting to talk about for a while. We'll also talk about another Netflix film that I'm actually very excited to talk about, is Rebel Ridge, which just came out today. And I have some very glowing, very glowing things to say about that one, so I'm looking forward to talking about that. And then if we have time for it too, I'll also briefly talk about Paul Feig's new film. Currently, I believe it's on Amazon, was it? It's called Jackpot, and it stars Awkwafina and John Cena. And I believe it was Amazon. So we'll get to that. But I know it's been a while since I've done my last stream here, but we're coming up on award season, and that's usually a very, very, very busy time because we got a lot of films that we're going to cover, and a lot of films that are going to be covering early. In fact, last year we got the Neon box that came with Robot Dreams, which I did review, but that film didn't actually come out for 6 months. So if you want to stay on top of the latest films that are coming out, be sure to subscribe to this channel. I always keep it updated with reviews when I can. But if you want more up-to-date stuff and you're willing to read, go check out movieswithmark.com because I do update that one the most. The other thing, I'm pretty sure I linked it in this time, but I also do have a Patreon where I am writing about Saturday morning cartoons, which are going into a book. And if you're a patron, you will get a free copy of that book. Okay, let's waste no more time here and just get to the top film that everyone is going to see this weekend, the film that everybody wants to know if it's good or not. So let me get up my notes here. For Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. So nice they named it twice. Or is it? Give me a moment and you'll find out. All right. Let me prepare myself here. All right, here we go. The review of Beetlejuice Beetlejuice in 3, 2, 1. So Beetlejuice Beetlejuice is the apparently long-awaited sequel to Tim Burton's Beetlejuice, which once again finds Michael Keaton becoming the buck wild exorcist of Beetlejuice. Now, interestingly enough, I think it was kind of a good choice to bring Tim Burton back to direct this sequel. Not just because Burton directed the original one, but I think that Burton realizes what made the first Beetlejuice, I think, so appealing. And I think the most memorable thing, and I think the thing I loved the most about the original Beetlejuice was just the staging of it all. Like I love the sets, I love the effects. The most like memorable things for me are like, when like the ghosts like stretch out their bodies and like, they open up their mouths and there's eyeballs on their tongue and all these weird creature designs here and there. That's like, for me, like kind of like the heart and soul of what made Beetlejuice so much fun, and I think why a lot of people love it as well. And that's kind of the good thing about Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, is that it leans into a lot of that, and I think that's for the best, because this is a film that there's a lot going on, and it does become a bit messy and uneven. But I think the more that it leans into like the wild nature of all like the effects and the puppets and the macabre and the dark humor, I think that's where it works. And it gets to a certain point by like the third act where it just like, everything is kind of culminating, but at the same time, it's just like it's still like a bit of a mess. Like there's an unevenness, but just the way that everything is presented, I think that really works well for this film. Because, like, I mean, script-wise, there's a lot going on in this film. Too much, even. So you have Winona Ryder, once again, reprising her role as Lydia Dietz. She's much older now, but now she uses her ability to see ghosts for her own benefit to kind of, like, rise up in fame. Except she's still haunted by Beetlejuice, and she still hasn't come to terms with her past in a number of ways. Not just with Beetlejuice haunting her, but also with like having lost her husband, and just recently she's lost her father, and also she's having problems connecting with her mom, and and her mom is once again played by Catherine O'Hara, and Lydia also has to deal now with her own daughter, played by Jenna Ortega, who's called Astrid, and they feel a little bit distant because Astrid doesn't believe in the paranormal, so there's a whole family crisis going on here. But she's hoping that that she'll be able to resolve these issues, when she's able to come home to the original spot, where she first saw the ghosts for the funeral of her dad. And that's not even covered. There's also like Lydia's current boyfriend, who is like a manipulative person who's trying to look out for her, but really he's just like a greedy guy who wants all her money, and they kind of set that up as him being like the obvious villain here. And that's before we even get into all like what Beetlejuice is doing here, because even outside of that, like Beetlejuice has his own thing going on in the underworld. Apparently, Beetlejuice's ex-wife, played by Monica Bellucci, called Dolores, has like somehow broken out of her containment and is now sucking out souls. So now Beetlejuice is kind of on the run and needs to kind of like seek safety, but at the same time he's still going after Lydia, and it's just like, there's so much going on in this. There's a whole Astrid has like a romance with a teenager that happens about halfway through this film, and she connects with there's, like I said, there's too much going on in this film. And that kind of hurts the film, because like with so much going on, there's not much time to develop these characters. Like Dolores, you would think would be like an interesting villain, but she's more interesting in her staging. Like she doesn't really have any memorable lines, and her motives aren't that unique or interesting. Even Lydia's manipulative boyfriend isn't like, he's kind of like more like leans on the cartoonish villain side, to the point where he's like very overt in his intentions by the end. Like he's just outright stating what he's gonna do with Lydia. And even like Astrid's relationship is like it feels like everything is like speed running here, like as quickly as it can, to get the plot, like all these plot lines smushed together as quickly as they can, mostly because the funeral takes place about 2 days before Halloween, and leading up to Halloween there's way too much going on. Like there's a wedding that's going to happen, there's there's, like I said, too much going on. But like I said, the staging is what makes this film work, because like I said, like with Dolores, like yeah, she's a good villain to look at, but they don't really give her much of a motivation or much of any lines. But as the film kept going on, like I started watching it, and like I was admiring like the practical effects and the weird creepy creatures. Like I especially loved how Beetlejuice has his own office where he's employed all the those like shrunken head characters from the previous film. I love how they kind of like covert about the office in this kind of like dryly comedic way. It's fun to get lost in like those detours, because this film does take a lot of detours, and I think by the time it gets mostly to the underworld, and it has like all like like the typical like bureaucracy that goes on there. I mean, you have some fun cameos with Danny DeVito as a janitor who's like chugging Drano. All those little elements I thought were fun, and I like that Burton allows us to just kind of get lost in it all by the third act. And I don't think it's even just like the staging. I also think it's like the energy that you have to bring to this type of material to make it fun. Like at one point, they established that there's a train that takes people like to the hereafter, like where the ghosts meet their ultimate fate, and it's called the Soul Train. And they do lean into like the Soul Train parody, where like, once they get down there, it's all like disco music and 70s dancers, so that they play up the whole Soul Train angle, which could be a tired bit. If it weren't for the fact that there's a lot of energy in that scene. It's dazzling to look at. The music's great. There's just the dancing. All of it, I think, goes a long way to get you into the right mood where you're more along for the ride, rather than questioning too much of the dynamics here. Michael Keaton back as Beetlejuice, I think he still kind of has a little bit of that charm that the original Beetlejuice had. There are rarely moments where like it slows down too much. Like even in like the backstory that Beetlejuice divulges about Dolores, he does it with style. Like there's a very clear Mario Brava what do you an homage to him, including they also have like a Mario Brava by name at one point. They reference him, but I love that Beetlejuice gets to play around with that, where even when he does have to slow down and bring out some exposition, he's still able to do it in kind of like a fun and gruesome manner. And he hasn't lost his touch. In fact, the first time that Beetlejuice and Lydia meet like face to face, it starts off the way that you would expect their meeting to go. Like his Beetlejuice makes his guts explode out, and there's like a baby Beetlejuice that's flying around, and the baby Beetlejuice is nibbling on people's feet. It's all like that, leaning into like the weird, that I think makes it work. And the more that the film goes on, I think that it works. It kind of works its magic over on me. And I'm glad it did, because otherwise, if it was just relying on the story here and didn't have as much of that Tim Burton style and that tone, I don't think I'd be as engaged with it. In fact, I think I might be a little mad that I kind of like wasted a few actors here. I haven't even covered like Willem Dafoe playing this great character called Wolf Jackson, who in reality he was an actor, but after he died, he became a detective, even though he's just an actor detective. So he kind of plays up his roles, and he has like cue cards, and he's constantly getting coffee from his assistant. And it's a very charming character. The same goes for like, there's another great role by, what's his name? There's a priest in here, who is constant. I think it's like it's a reverend, played by Bern Gorman, who is constantly talking in like scripture, like so quickly to kind of like rationalize everything in life by just like quoting scripture, and it just confuses everyone around him. And it's great. Like these are fun characters, and I guess like at first I was a little bit pissed that I didn't see as much of these characters, but at the same time I'm like, you know what, every time these characters are on screen, I'm having fun with them, and like I don't think like their jokes are overplayed. I feel like they're here just long enough where they're fun, and even like Danny DeVito is only in the film like very briefly. I feel like the film, it's, even though it's like it's going really quickly and it's veering off into so many detours and tracks, I think it finds the fun spots to go to with this material. The film does kind of lean, I think, a little bit more on the like the karaoke that Beetlejuice did in the original film. Like they don't just like rehash all the same songs. There is one like alternative version of a familiar song that they use, but I did kind of like how they use like a MacArthur Park for like the big finale there, and it's still that there's still something to be said of like the charm that Beetlejuice can weave when he's forcing people to do dance numbers and kind of like sing and have these odd expressions on their face where they can't believe that their bodies and their voices are doing this, which is like, it's equal parts creepy and it's fun. And I think that's where like the heart of Beetlejuice lies, that I think makes this film mostly work. Like script wise, it's a mess. It's uneven. It doesn't spend enough time developing its characters. But style wise, and I imagine that a lot of people are coming here just so that they can see familiar visuals and like tones of what the original Beetlejuice film was, and especially if you are like going in to see like a little bit more of the underworld, you will get that here. It is still fun to explore more of Tim Burton's wild world of the dead, and it's colorful, it's amusing, it's still got a little bit of that dark charm. It doesn't punch as much as the first film, but it still has its moments here and there. And you know, for just being a ride that veers all over the place. I kind of enjoyed it. Not as much as the first film, but for what it's trying to do here, I think it uses this material just enough where I think it's like a fairly satisfying sequel. It's a fun. It's not a great, but it is a fun ride for returning to this to Beetlejuice. He still kind of has it. Both Keaton and Burton, they still kind of have that Beetlejuice touch. So Beetlejuice is currently in theaters this weekend. It's not a bad film. About halfway through, it was losing me a little bit because I'm like, wow, this is... They're forgetting about like all these A, B, C, D, and E plots that are just not converging here. And even though I knew they would, it's like, this is uneven, but like I said, the more it goes, the more I got into it. Okay. Let's talk about the next big film. Let's talk about Alien Romulus. The next Alien film. Let me get my notes up here. Okay. All right. Here we go with Alien Romulus. In 3, 2, 1. So, Alien Romulus is it's an Alien side story film, which takes place between the events of the original Alien and its sequel film, Aliens. Now, initially, I was a bit dismayed that Ridley Scott never quite got to finish his own Alien trilogy of sorts with Prometheus and Alien Covenant. I know a lot of people had mixed feelings on those films just because they didn't like that it was explaining a little bit too much of the lore. But I thought for Ridley Scott trying to tinker with a little bit more of the philosophical elements of Alien, those films are really compelling, and I was kind of let down by the fact that the next Alien film was not going to go back to that, and it was just kind of going to veer into familiar territory and just be like a fairly safe sequel that just references what a lot of Alien fans have come to expect with these films. Now, that being said, yes, Romulus does have a lot of those elements. It does feel like it's trying to tap into what everybody remembers about Aliens, like a very nostalgic sequel in more than one ways. It does hint at past events, and there is the very questionable CGI inclusion of one of the old characters, which is definitely the worst part of the film. But for going back to retreading on the familiar ground that Alien has been on, I think it kind of works for getting Alien a little bit back to its roots while still trying to embrace a little bit more of the action and the horror aspect. So I guess the good news is if you never found yourself that into Prometheus and Covenant, you felt it was a little Scott was getting a little bit too buried in his philosophical mindset, and you just kind of love the kind of the gritty ragtag nature of the past Alien films that was showcasing how the Weyland-Yutani Corporation was corrupt and these people who were trying to strike back against that. Romulus gives you that. And I did like the fact that at least with the exception of the CGI inclusion, this is a fresh batch of young and determined characters who we do get to spend enough time with. So the premise of the film is that you have this group of miners who are on a planet trying to get off of it, and they realize there's no way they can escape from the Weyland-Yutani Corporation in the way that they're currently set up. So they need to find a way to get off planet, and the best way that they can do that is if they get in a ship and head off to this space station that's going to come in orbit soon and pilfer what they can from there to make their escape. And before they even get aboard, we do spend just enough time with the characters where we get to know and like them, kind of like we did in the past Alien films. So you have Kaylee Spaney playing like the main character of Rain, who is, they establish is an orphan. She doesn't have much, she doesn't have many people she can gravitate towards, so she befriends an android called Andy, played by David Johnson. And I love the fact that, like, Andy is not a perfect android. Like, he malfunctions. Like, he's clearly not as intelligent as other androids. And he, like, Rain constantly has to fix him. But Rain, she admires that, Andy still has this heart to him. So, yeah, very, very likable character here. And then you have Tyler, who is Rain's ex-boyfriend, played by Archie Renault. And then, like, a few other characters, Kay, Bjorn, and Navarro, and, they all have their own little, like, their quirks and their own recognizable, characters and personalities and different beliefs and, how they joke and how they have fun and different things that they're fighting for. So you get to know enough about these characters so they're not just, simplistic space marines or just, like, very basic space like space truckers. It actually does the work of making you care for these characters so that when the xenomorphs start coming out, you care about whether or not they're going to survive. And once they get aboard this space station, which they thought was going to be a simple, get in, get out, they soon realize that they have to find a way out as quickly as they can before the xenomorphs kill them and the space station crashes and they're all blown to smithereens. Now, the film, in terms of, like, the allegories, like, they're a little bit on the nose, but I mean, that's, like, it's on the nose in, like, the way that you feel would work for, like, an alien film. Like, I love the fact how Weyland-Yutani's corporate greed is personified through Andy. Like, at one point, Andy, like, upgrades himself with the same android tech on the ship, and that, of course, makes him fight more for the company than for them for the people he's trying to protect. And this leads to, and I love how they stage Andy here too, because Andy is made to be so smart, but he makes tough calls that, if you're completely detached from the film and you don't really care about the characters and you're only just focused on survival and you say, like, hey, these characters shouldn't do that or they shouldn't do this. Andy is that person who makes those tough calls about, locking people out when, like, there's a xenomorph in the room and not taking risks and, trying to keep everyone safe. And it's kind of like shoved back at the audience, say, no, if you do this, it kind of does make you inhuman and shows that you don't really care about these people. And I love how, it only takes, like, it takes, like, fighting back, for these people to survive, and, barely anyone makes it out alive. And for some people, I know, like, how it just kind of, like, keeps going here. Like, by the third act, it just becomes, like, a straight up chase. Like, a lot of, like, the deeper themes of contemplating, not just, like, the political and, like, the corporate angle, but also the sexual elements, which they are there. Like, the psychosexual aspects of, like, the original, like Giger's designs are kind of there. Like, they're, like I said, with a little bit of the capitalism commentary, it's much more overt. Like, at one point, there's the egg sac that shoots out acid that melts someone's face. It's straight up a vagina. Like, they put the extra detail in there to make it look like the vagina. And then, of course, when, like, the xenomorph emerges, it's highly phallic. That they do lean into that. And there are parts of it that do coincide with, like, the human beings. Like, one of the characters they establish is pregnant. And I do love the way that they kind of, like, set it up, because, like, they don't tell you outright who the father is, but if you pay enough attention to, like, the visual language, you can tell who is the dad among this crew. And like, you would think, like, okay, like, there's going to be some clashing with the xenomorphs and this pregnant woman and tapping deeper into this aspect of psychosexuality. And it kind of doesn't. Like, it's still, like, those two elements still merge. But it almost kind of feels like out of necessity rather than exploring something deeper about, like, like the aliens representing, like sexuality and, like, like fear of being, like sexually assaulted and, highlighting on the womb. All that just kind of feels a little bit like surface level here. Mostly because, like I said, by the third act, it's just, like, straight up running and gunning, chasing, trying to escape the aliens, and aliens are gutting people. and it's gross and gruesome. So, and the thing is, enough of the effects I feel were really cool. And the soundtrack was perfect for making this setting where there are moments of terror and there are moments of wonder. And it just engrosses you where even though, yeah, it is a chase, I was in it. I was willing to see, you know, who's going to make it out by the end. And there were a few surprises here and there about which characters they fear are dead and which ones aren't, and which ones get cornered and which ones die in the most weird and horrific ways of, like, you know, xenomorphs bursting out of their body. All that stuff is fun. And like, and I think just on like the atmosphere, I think Romulus works. And like I said, with the referencing of the previous films and the somewhat pointless like CGI inclusion of an old character are not needed. And many of those aspects, especially like when they, at one point they cite a familiar line from the past films, and it's just like moments like that really take you out of the film and realize, oh, God, why do you have to do this? Why can't you have enough faith to just go with this material that you've set up here and not just reference previous Alien films? Because that's a little bit of the infuriating thing. It's like, because most of the film does hold up well on its own without just drawing back on like previous references. You know, like the Jurassic Park movies had to constantly remind you of the original film. And Romulus doesn't do that as much. Or at least, I guess, like, the better way to describe that is that they do not inhibit the rest of the film. It's like, you know, and that's, I think that's, like, the biggest praise I can say for the film is that enough of the, like, more original aspects that work here with director Fede Alvarez is that he has like enough faith to not just make it a bunch of references. There are still references, but you know, Alvarez, for like, you know, his previous work on like Evil Dead and Don't Breathe, he knows how to wield horror that keeps you watching and keep the horror like gory and gruesome right up to the very end. And I know like the ending is like a little bit like controversial as well. Maybe not quite so much Prometheus controversial, although it does very much have that Prometheus vibe by the end of that film for a multitude of reasons. But, you know, just for like the way that the film is presented with like, you know, a lot of like the practical effects, it's obviously not all practical effects. There is some CGI here. I don't want to be one of those people who say, oh, thank God they didn't use CGI here, because they do. They all use CGI to some degree. But having some of the practical effects, like, you know, with like some of the xenomorphs and the weird creature at the end there, which part of you almost thinks that it is CGI, but then I later saw there's some practical effects shots with it. All that stuff is pretty cool to see. So I would say that, you know, if you did get used to Ridley Scott's like Prometheus and Covenant tapping into deeper ideas, you're not going to get that with Romulus. That being said, if you do like Alien more for the effects and the gore, and just like the general presentation, I think you're going to like this film. It ultimately depends, I think, on how willing you are to forgive a bit of like the needless nostalgic references that they push in here, and just appreciate a lot of like the alien effects and the gore and the setting and the atmosphere. Because on that level alone, Alvarez gets this film right, and he does play to his strengths here that he had within his past horror films. I also like the fact that Alvarez's idea was a good one. Like, I think is like his initial concept was that he wanted to explore an alien film that explored it through like the eyes of younger people who have grown up in such an environment. Because, you know, there was one deleted scene you noticed where there were like some kids running by in one of the alien films, and he's kind of like, oh, what was it like for those kids to grow up in this environment? And I think that's a pretty cool angle to explore, because like for the first act at least, that kept me engaged immediately. Like, I wanted to see what these characters grew up in this environment, and that have essentially been left this horrible world that's been left for them by their parents, try to adjust to it. And I think that might resonate for a lot of younger audiences and a lot of like younger Alien fans. So yeah, I don't think Alien Romulus is on the same level as Alien or Aliens, or even for that matter, Prometheus and Covenant, mostly because I love those movies to death. But in terms of just like a fun alien film that still has its messaging on point, and it still has the psychosexual elements, and it's still a gory, action-filled mess. Yeah, Romulus mostly delivers on a fairly fun, which sounds weird to say about a film where tons of people are dying and there's gruesome gore all over the place. But yeah, it is a fun horror film, which is, Alvarez playing to his strengths. So yeah, I kind of dug Alien Romulus. So Alien Romulus, I think, will be in theaters for a little bit. I have to see how long it holds up, I'll take a brief moment to catch up on the chat here while I load up the other notes and get a drink here. Any thoughts on Long? I have not seen Long Legs yet, unfortunately. Like, wasn't Long Legs like wasn't Neon too? Because like Neon films, you gotta be quick. You gotta be really quick when those are in the theater. So yeah, I haven't seen Long Legs yet, but if it is Neon, I do get like the big Neon box at the end of the year. So eventually I'll see it. This was definitely Nick Cage's creepiest performances. It was pretty artsy, but just unique enough for me to like it. I mean, it's a neon horror film, it's got Nicolas Cage in it. I would expect it to be a little bit artsy, See, Sucked says Ian Holmes was weird. Like, yeah, Ian Holmes was like pretty weird. And it's like, if you want to try to rationalize it, you can be like, oh, well, it was a different model. And, he's probably seen the same stuff that the other crew has seen, and referencing the Nostromos. But at the end of the day, you gotta admit, yeah, they put it in here for nostalgia. And even like when because even like when that like Alvarez like actually like contacted like the Holmes estate and said like, hey, can we use his CGI recreation of the film? And it's like, yeah, it's fine. It still doesn't take that weird taste out of your mouth that it's just like it's just playing up on nostalgia, So yeah. It's definitely the weakest part of the film, by far. Which sucks because, like, honestly, what would have been really cool? Who they should have cast instead of Ian Holmes? They should have had Michael Fassbender come back as David. Oh my god, that would have been like such a like wonderful little like nod to like making Prometheus and Covenant more alien canon by having like an old David model in there. I know like it probably wouldn't make sense because like Wayland Yutani would be like, oh, David was too dangerous, we can't have another David, but it makes about as much sense as having Ian Holmes there. Also, I just want Michael Fassbender back. He was so good as David. Like, if you're just gonna, like, bring back another actor to play an android, like, you could recreate Ian Holmes, or, the actor who plays Bishop is still alive. Actually, that'd be really cool, though. Like, Lance Henriksen is still alive. And that would actually be really cool, because yeah, like, Lance Henriksen, he's much older. So, like, I know, like, what they would think. They would think, okay, we got a CGI Lance Henriksen's face. But I like, no, don't. Leave all the wrinkles and make it so like he was like a decayed android that had been on the space station for a long time. Oh my god, that would have been. I mean, it's if you're gonna nostalgia bait with that, it's either Lance Henriksen or Michael Fassbender. Made Prometheus theme make more sense. It actually would have. I mean, it would tie in, I think, a little bit more interestingly for having David back. I don't know. I just love Prometheus and Covenant, and I know a lot of people. I know a lot of people really don't like those films because they don't like that they try to make the xenomorphs like an experiment, and they try to make the space jockey like basically people who created humans and xenomorphs. But yeah, those like on a bigger film, but besides outside the lore and all that crap. Like philosophically and thematically, those films rock. They also just look amazing. Let's see, last movie I saw was The Crow. It was an okay start, but the villains were just bleh, so many questions with them. There were some moments I liked, but it's not good. Yeah, It didn't look good. In fact, you want to know why and I'm sure like some people have noticed this too. The studios did not have faith in The Crow because they did not give us a screening for it. And by the studios, I mean Lionsgate, because like this happened like a week or two before with Borderlands. Borderlands, they didn't give us a screener for either. In fact, if I remember correctly, they set the embargo date for the date that the day that the movie premiered in theaters, not preview night, the day after. So yeah, Lionsgate is based on the way that they've been acting, it doesn't look like they've been having a good year. Which sucks because like like usually back in the day, I considered this like a bad sign when like a film doesn't want to give out screeners to critics and set a sharp embargo date to make sure that they don't talk about it. That's usually a bad sign. Not always the case though. Like I remember we didn't get a screener for the remake of Child's Play. And it wasn't that bad. It's definitely not, as great as like the current canon of the Child's Play movies, which are kind of actually surprisingly if you have a pretty solid record as far as like horror sequels have gone. But yeah, I wish they would have given us a screener because I would have loved to say, yeah, it's not bad. For how terrible it could have been, it was actually pretty good. I wish I'd at least use Take What You Want in the trailer. Oh, yeah, that would have been better. Lionsgate does have some bad movies these days. Well, yeah. But still, you should get the word out, because then what if you actually do have a good film on your hands? Like, I haven't seen The Crow yet. And what if maybe I actually would have liked The Crow? Maybe I would have been like the one like defender of The Crow, and I could have like, come out in big support of it. I don't know, because I didn't get a chance to see it. I've defended some movies that I've been strictly alone on. Oh my god. I know it's easy to say now, but at the time when Speed Racer came out, I was really alone. I was really alone when Domino came out in 2005. I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't. I mean, it's free marketing. I mean, I know like the more like technical reasoning for why they would do this, which is because if people don't know what the reviews are, then they'll just go in blindly and like pre-order tickets. Because like there is the chance that if they do read negative reviews, that they won't pre-order tickets, or they won't go see it that weekend. Which is not a good strategy. You want to get your film out there, All right. So we got 3 more movies to talk about. Why did I decide 3? Sorry. Why did I decide 5? I initially did 3, but then I kept pushing the stream back, and then we got more. And it's only going to get worse from here on out. These are like smaller films too. All right. Let's have a little change of pace here. Talk about a non-genre film. Get a little bit serious here, and we'll talk about briefly talk about this documentary Daughters. I don't have like the biggest amount of complaints to say about it. So, all right, let me get my notes up here. Okay, and here we go in 3, 2, 1. So, Daughters is a documentary all about a daddy-daughter dance that is held in prison, and it seems like a very like important cause to get behind, because it gives a lot of these girls who've grown up, without having their dad most of the time, being given a chance to connect with their dad, and in a very like touching way. And I think like the best way to like kind of prepare yourself for this film is during the initial meeting that the people organizing this event have with the incarcerated fathers, because they tell them like, look, when we have this dance, this wonderful little like afternoon evening dance that you're gonna have with your daughters, it's gonna be a fun event, you're gonna connect with each other, it's gonna be an emotional roller coaster. you're going to have a lot of fun. You're going to chat with each other. It's going to be like you never left, and you have like this instant rapport. And by the time it gets to the end of the evening, you're going to be gutted. You're going to feel that pain that you're going to have to be separated again, and it's going to sting. It's going to sting hard. But it's an important aspect. I think, yeah, it's as they highlight in this film constantly. They say that this is an important way to do better in the community, because as they've shown that a lot of daddy-daughter, dads that attend this daddy-daughter dance with their daughters end up actually kind of reforming. Like, it actually shows results that, they have like a better chance of, getting out of prison and forming a better family life. And I love how a film like this, like, it feels like it could lean, it could just lean into more of like the history, and it could just like kind of like show like the heartwarming moments and make it a little bit too soft. But I love the fact that that the directors here, Natalie Ray and Angela Patton, they lean into the reality of this, which is, they show like all the different colors that would come with this daddy-daughter dance. Like, they show connections that are reformed, where there was initially a disconnect, and the dads and daughters reconnect, and they improve their relationship. There are relationships that start off very, very strong, where like a very young daughter connects with her dad easily, and she's actually turns out to be a lot stronger than the dad when it comes time to say goodbye during the dance. And it's very bittersweet to see them together, and it's very, very heartwarming as well. And there are also relationships that are strained right from the get-go, and they do not get better even with this dance. Like, even at the dance, you can see this dad and daughter, even though they're a little bit affectionate, they still have this distance between them, and they're still fighting. And even when they show the aftermath, when they show what happens, like many months after the dance, there's still that disconnect there. And it doesn't work out for all the dads either. Some of them do get out, and some of them do reform themselves. Some of them, even when they do get out of prison, they still realize they have a ways to go. And some of them don't get out of prison at all, and are actually transferred to a different prison where daddy-daughter dances would not be possible. So it does proceed down like some dark routes. So it's not afraid to show like the hope that can come about with the daddy-daughter dance, but it's not afraid to show like, look, it's not 100% of the time. It's not going to reform everything. There's only so much that the community can do for certain people. But at the same time, in that moment when they showcase the dance, like, you can see it, there is a connection there, where even when there's still like a bitter feud or a separation, these families do still come together. And it's a really important, like, yeah, like it's heartfelt, but there's also like an important aspect where it feels like this needs to be shown, and it needs to like highlight how important it is to like focus, because like so many people say like kids these days are terrible because they don't have like a father in the household, and like like single parent homes and all that. And this film like leans in and say like, well, if the father isn't there, try to find a way to get the father more into their lives, and this is a way to help with that. Not completely help with that. Obviously, there's a lot more that needs to be done, but the daddy-daughter dance is honestly a really important step in, improving, families and communities in a very big way. And I love how like they do showcase a little bit of the history behind it, which is that, when it was initially proposed, it was considered a bit outrageous, not so much for, proposing it, as opposed to just like, nobody had thought of this before. And they were kind of like, wow, how do we approach that? They want to set up this, where prisoners who are dads get to reconnect with their daughters. And it's like, that actually sounds like a good idea. We should probably do that. And this film showcases the importance of having that. And I think why it needs to continue, while still showcasing how there are bigger problems that face these communities that affect these kids in many different ways. Because like I said, yeah, there's the one kid who's, a little bit, like still maintains her heart through all this, and she's still kind of hopeful for her dad. But there are other kids, like one one of the teenagers in particular is so like, bitter about the world that she's grown up in. She's basically told the camera directly, like, when she grows up, she doesn't want, she doesn't want to bring kids into this world. She's not even sure if she wants to, get married after seeing what happened with her family. And I think it's really important to highlight that aspect about, I mean, it seems like an obvious thing to showcase. Like, what do we as adults leave for our children, and what examples do we lead by, and what do we leave them with? And there are some hopeful moments, but there's also like nasty, like there's this nastiness for the world that some kids adopt from that as well. And sometimes it comes in unexpected ways. Like there's at one point in the film where one daughter just becomes so distant from her father, like she's almost like apathetic to his presence at all. Where even like phone calls, she finds herself, so unwilling to talk with her dad that it's heartbreaking. And I think that's where the core of this film lies, is in showing you the heartbreaking moments that come with, separating dads from their daughters within like the prison system, and why it's so important that connection needs to be maintained in some way, and what will happen if it doesn't. So yeah, on that aspect alone, like daughters just like I said, when they had that meeting, yeah, it's an emotional roller coaster, and it's gonna rip your heart out, and it did for me, but in a very, very meaningful way, and very, very, very bittersweet. I absolutely love this documentary. So Daughters is currently playing on Netflix, fresh from the from Sundance this year, actually. Oh, see, one more comment here from what I was talking about with the Lionsgate embargoes. I wish I could have been that person. I kept telling people, Morbius was just okay, not worthy of all the hate. Well, okay. I mean, like I said, everyone's got to fight for something. Honestly, Morbius is just dull for me. That's what it is. I mean, if you're a comic book fan looking for like breaking lore and stuff that's gonna make you furious, like none of that really, but just dull. Same with Madam Web. Madam Web and Morbius are just like two Spider-Man films without Spider-Man that don't really seem that interested in the powers. And then there's Venom. Oh god, we got another Venom coming out. Even defended the Double Dragon. Double Dragon's at least campy. There is like they tried to force camp with Morbius, saying like, oh, mom's for Morbius, it's Morbin time, and it's like, and none of that was that. Then you actually watch the film and it's not that funny. Double Dragon actually it's pretty silly. There's some genuinely funny moments that I kind of love in there. I love the fact that they're in like kind of like a dystopian world, and like if you want oxygen, you got to go to like payphones and stuff like that. Like stuff like that is really cute in the film. I'll go to bat a little bit for that. I want to see Madam Web just because of that Pepsi comment that I made. Yeah, the product placement in Madam Web. I've said that in my review too. I will say this. It's interesting to do like I would say before Madam Web, watch Ghost Dad, because in Ghost Dad there's very clearly a blatant advertisement for Coke, specifically with the way that Bill Cosby in the film holds the Coke, and I want you to compare that to the way that that Madam Web holds a Pepsi in this film, to make sure that the logo is perfectly in frame there. It's so strange because like when you tell people about that ending that happens with like the Pepsi sign, they don't believe you, and then they actually watch it, and it's like, wow, it's really there. Okay. What do we got left? All right, I'm going to choose something, a little bit of a change of pace here. Well, not much of a change, but there's another Netflix film. But this one is also really good. I don't know why I said it like, like it was gonna be something different. It's like, no, this one is a terrible. No, this one is actually a really good one. All right, it's been years since I saw Ghost Dad. Well, there's a reason for that. We used to actually at Anime Detour, we used to make like a running joke about Ghost Dad. I don't know why. I just found it like such a bizarre film that I just forced it into like horrors of anime segments. Just cause it's so bad. But it's bad in a very like an endearing way where it's so bad it's funny. All right. Let me get my notes up here. Get a drink. All right. And here we go in 3, 2, 1. So, Rebel Ridge is a new action thriller from the director of Green Room, Jeremy Saulnier. Now, if you remember Green Room, way back from 2015, that film was just like gritty and intense with these characters feeling trapped, and Rebel Ridge actually has a lot of those familiar elements. Because on the surface, this would seem like a very like vanilla Netflix film. In fact, like parts of it, in terms of like just on paper, kind of reminded me of like another action film Netflix had this year called Trigger Warning. So the premise is that Terry Richmond, played by Aaron Pierre, is in this small town of Shelby Springs, and he's trying to spring his cousin from jail by paying the bail and like, going off to live with his cousin and on a boat and just like reform their lives. Unfortunately, en route to freeing his cousin from jail, Terry is pulled over by some corrupt cops that confiscate his money and intentionally injure him. Now, what makes Terry so interesting as the protagonist of this story is that Terry approaches everything from a very he very much keeps his tone in check, and he tries to be like, very cooperative and stern when trying to like get his way of like, trying to free his cousin. So when he gets pulled over by the cops, he just like, obviously the cops are in the wrong here. Like they push him off his bike while they were on cars. They harass him, they confiscate his money, and he's just kind of like, okay, this can't happen. And the cop's saying, well, it's going to happen. It's like, okay, well, what do I have to do next? What do I have to do to get this money back and to free my cousin? So ultimately, Terry ends up contacting the police chief, Sandy Byrne, who's played by Don Johnson, which, oh my God. Don Johnson is usually a pretty damn good actor here, but as like this villainous, corrupt police chief, he makes a meal out of his lines here. Like he finds just the perfect way to make them sound like sinister and believable as a small town police chief that doesn't come off like very cartoonish. Like he does have this intimidating nature to the way that he just like flat out tells Terry to like F off when he's trying to go the legal route of trying to free his cousin. Now there is some help that Terry gets from this court clerk called Summer, who's played by Anna Sophia Robb. And she's very sympathetic. She's in like a little bit of a similar plight. she's trying to maintain custody of her daughter, so she's trying to do the best that she can. But she realizes in order to help Terry, she's kind of got to do it under, kind of off the books, because she realizes that even though what she's doing is legal, she knows that she's in a corrupt system, and that if she talks about this stuff out in the open, she's going to be targeted. Which she's not wrong about, because once it gets revealed that she's working with Terry, things go south pretty quick. Now, of course, when things get at their worst, Terry will, as you might have seen with like the trailers and what his tone might imply, Terry is going to go on the offensive. He is going to start attacking the cops. And he does fairly early in the film, because once he's kind of exhausted all legal means of trying to get back the money that was stolen from him, and believe me, he tries everything to kind of reform it. Like, he asks other people for money. He tries to get documents signed. He tries to meet with the police. He tries to crack a deal. Nothing works. So at that point, it's just like, you know what? That's enough. I'm going to get that money on my own, and just, like, you know, beats down on Sandy and his cops so that he can get inside the police station and get back his money. And when he does that, he uncovers a bigger conspiracy involving, because, like, the police station, it has about as much money as a bank, and it has about as much guns as, like, an army base. So obviously, you know, if you've watched a lot of action films of this nature, you can kind of put two and two together here. You more or less know what's going to happen here. The police are trying to cover up corruption. They want to get more money. They want to get more guns, and they want to continue being just a bunch of dicks. And there's been tons of films like that, but what makes Rebel Ridge so much more interesting is that it doesn't waste its time trying to explain all that. You know, like, if you've seen this film, or if you're even just familiar with, like, police corruption, you know where all this is going. And what I love so much about Saulnier's direction is that he just leans into the atmosphere and just the pacing and the grit of it all. Like, I love Aaron Pierce's performance as Terry, because, like, throughout the film, he always has, like, this, like, you know, cooperative and low and stern tone when approaching every situation, even dangerous situations, because, as they later reveal, yeah, he has, like, military experience and dangerous military experience. So yeah, he's gonna be able to take on as many cops as possible, but in non-lethal ways, which I thought was really cool to see, the way that he would just, like, unload a shotgun, take out all the bullets, and just, like, throw it in someone's face, and break limbs, and just, like, you know, toss cops to the side. All that stuff is pretty cool. But in addition to just, like, you know, Pierce looking cool, Aaron Pierre, I mispronounced his name there. In addition to Pierre actually looking really cool during these action sequences, his stern tone makes him more intimidating, because there are a few moments where he actually does, like, let his anger get the best of him. Just ends up, like, shouting back at people when, like, you know, they're not cooperating, or they're not listening to him to a certain degree. And he only does it, like, a few times, and it really leaves an impact. Like, it's one of those, it's kind of like, you know, how, like, a quiet dad is always, like, very quiet and disappointed, and only a few times they'll scream at you. It's like that. And I think that really works for the benefit of Aaron playing this character, because it does make him a very interesting and unique character, but one that you want to root for, because he is intelligent and trying to take, like, the best route forward here. Which is, like, another way that I would describe Rebel Ridge in general, is that, like, yeah, it's an action thriller, but it's not a mindless one. It actually has characters who are making, like, the smart and tough calls, like, and that goes for pretty much every character. Like, Sandy, yeah, he's egotistical, but he's aware enough of the system where he knows how to manipulate it, where he is actually pretty cunning in how he stages this corruption. Summer is, even though she is very much a victim in all this, like, she spends most of the film getting forcibly drugged by all these goons, she's smart enough to know that, you know, after a night of being drugged, she can't go to the hospital, because she knows if she does, she's going to come up on drugs charges, and she's going to lose custody of her kid. She can see the game that's being played here. Because, like I said, she's smart enough to know that, you know, like, she has to keep everything on the down low, otherwise she's going to be targeted, even though she does end up being targeted in the end. Even smaller roles with, like, James Cromwell is in this film briefly as a judge, and he's, like, he leans into corruption, but he leans into it in a smart way, where he realizes that, oh yeah, I'm trying to protect this police footage from getting out to the public, but I'm not going to look at it. I don't want to be implicated. I don't want to be targeted. I'm trying to find the best ways to keep my head down here. But like I said, going back to how the film is framed, I think it also realizes that, you know, that the audience is smart enough where we know what is on, like, those SD cards that are being protected. It's obviously police brutality, and they never explain it. They never even show it in the film. You just know that they've done something bad. And it keeps up the pacing there. There's never a moment where it slows down with expositions. It's like, well, long ago when this town was assembled, and then when Sandy was rising through the ranks and he wants to become like, we know the deal. We've been through this. Like, if you, like I said, if you've watched a lot of Netflix action films, you know where this is going. And this is kind of like Rebel Ridge is like trimming off the fat from all of that. It's trimming off the fat and just leaving in the more interesting aspects of an action thriller. It's brilliantly moody. Like the music by Brooke and Will Blair is just pitch perfect for this type of film. Like it's dark, it's brooding. It very much has this cerebral nature to it all, where it doesn't just feel like a simple revenge film. It feels like it's much more intricate. And a lot of that has to do with the staging, because there are a lot of action films that think they're being intricate by staging this kind of like corruption story. So for treading on very, very familiar ground here, I think that Saulnier's direction is what makes this film work. It works just about as well as as Green Room. Like, if you love that film for how it just kept the characters trapped and just kept building and building and building, where they had to find a way out, and it gets more intense and more brutal. This film did it for me. Like the fantastic performances all around, the staging, the mood, and the smarts of it. Just make this such a brilliant action thriller. And it's been so long since I've seen an action thriller that just it has a little bit of everything. It has, like I said, great performances, great mood, great tone, and great brains in its head, which we could really use from a Netflix action film. So thank goodness that Saulnier directed Rebel Ridge and actually made an engaging and exciting action thriller that I just couldn't get enough of this. So Rebel Ridge is currently playing on Netflix. Started today. Read a few of the comments here. You ever seen that Disney movie where Bill Cosby was the devil? Was that what was that? Was that like one more with or no, wait, was it Saturday? No. That's a different one. Oh wait, you listed it here. Yeah, The Devil of Max Devlin. I think I did see that, but it was very long ago. I think. Oh wow, I think the last time I saw that was when I was working in a video store, and I think we like when I worked at the video store, the manager had this rule where you could only play like Disney movies. It used to be PG movies, but we played like Back to the Future and Goonies and Indiana Jones, so she got pissed at us and just said you can only play Disney stuff from the Disney section for kids. So we actually did have a copy of The Devil of Max Devlin. And I remember watching it, but my memory's a little hazy on it. Oh, here we go. It's the only memorable for Bill Cosby as devil, and one scene where it reminds me of the Bedazzled remake when Elizabeth Hurley goes full angry. Yeah, like I said, like I barely remember any of that film, but like I said, it's been 20 years since I've seen that film. Long time. Okay, last film. Let's see if I got it in me. Alright. Let me get the notes. Okay. This will be a quick one because I don't have too much to say in this one. Alright. So here we go with Jackpot in 3, 2, 1. So Paul Feig's Jackpot is a film that takes place in a... I would say like soft dystopia, because like there's dystopian elements, but it's still kind of set in modern day, and there's not a lot of dystopia. I mean, it depends, I guess, on your outlook, but the way that I figured this film was assembled is like it feels like very much like Paul Feig's take on like The Purge, because the whole premise of the film is that strictly within within this setting of 2030 California, there is a lottery, and it's the way that this lottery works is that it's like a typical lottery. You know, like you get a ticket, and you know if it gets chosen, you win all this money. The catch is though that whoever has the winning ticket, they have to live for 24 hours, and if anybody kills that person, they get all the money instantly. So very bizarre concept, and it gets even more bizarre with how they try to frame it in this film, because the protagonist of this film is Katie, played by Aquafina, who is someone who's new to town, and she is so new that she doesn't know there's this death lottery that's apparently been going on within California this entire time, and her excuse is she was just watching old movies for many years with her family, which is like, I'm sorry, but like none of this like would be made known to you, or like you wouldn't take that into account. Okay, so there's already like flaws right from the get-go, but like I said, this is kind of like Paul Feig's version of The Purge, because The Purge also has some problems with it that, you know, don't make too much sense when you sit down and think about it for a moment. But, you know, okay, fine, whatever, I'll go with it. So Katie comes to town and she unwittingly gets entered into the lottery. She wins it, and she has to survive for about like 24 hours. So the only person that can help her is Noel, played by John Cena, who comes to her rescue as kind of like a protection agent who basically says, hey, if you let me in on 10% of your winnings, I'll make sure that nobody else kills you. I'll fight off all your attackers. I'll kill for you. I'll get everyone off your back, you know, whatever it takes. So this is more or less the framing for an excuse for Aquafina to run around town trying to avoid everyone trying to kill her, while John Cena comes to her defense. And, you know, then, you know, Aquafina and John Cena have a little bit of a... The film wants them to have some chemistry, but it feels kind of forced just to like a handful of funny lines here. And they kind of like form a connection over the course of 24 hours and become best friends. So there's a lot of problems with this film. Like, for starters, maybe this was my problem with the film, is that I initially came into it thinking it was kind of going to be like probably one of my favorite Paul Feig films, which was Spy, because Spy did a great job kind of like offering out both parody and satire of action spy films, while still leaning into like the feminist aspect that Paul Feig wants to inject into a lot of his films. I thought there was a pretty good mixture there. Jackpot kind of wants to do the same, but it feels like it wants to make like commentary on class and divide, but not really. It's very weird. And then when like and to add to that, Paul Feig also wants to add in like a few like feminist jokes in here, but because like I think mostly just because like the class satire isn't really there, or like, you know, leading into the dystopian aspects are not that apparent. It doesn't make like his feminist jokes. It makes them more like ham-fisted in, which feels like, okay, this is like kind of like meeting the requirements here, because a lot of the time the whole film is just like an excuse for Aquafina to run around and defend herself and like make jokes the whole time, and the jokes are scattershot here. Mostly because like she runs into a lot of other like silly characters who are just like, you know, playing up their roles. Like at one point they run into Machine Gun Kelly, and they don't really like, it's treated more like a Simpsons cameo where there's like some light jokes about like, you know, this celebrity and his excess. But I think this is what I probably hate most about the film, is that it imagine if Squid Game was just about the person winning, and then at the end of the game, that person leads a happy and fun life, and there's a very cheerful ending. And it's like, if you did that, the thematic elements wouldn't work. But because this is Paul Feig's film, and he wants it to be like, you know, fun and have like this character chemistry and a little bit of this, you know, romance going on, he kind of has to lean into that. And by the time it gets to the end of the film, even the film kind of admits that, you know, when Aquafina and John Cena, spoiler alert, they end up winning the lottery. Even after they win the lottery, they try to do good for the community by investing in projects, but they still, at the end of the film, they still end up on a yacht, and they're just kind of like, oh my God, we've become like those rich jerks that we hate so much. And in fact, there is a rich jerk in the film that they despise, played by Simu Liu, and he's just kind of like a generic greedy bad guy. There's not that much to him. It's just like he wants like that cash prize and all that, so he's willing to deceive, and he has this money. And you would think a lesson would be learned from trying to fight this guy, but at the end of the film, even when Aquafina's character realizes this, she's just kind of like, oh well, I guess we're rich now. Sucks to be everyone else in this dystopian future, but hey, I got mine, which, goddamn, like, really? You know, if you're gonna, and the thing is, like, this film tries so hard with the jokes and they just do not land. Like at one point, Aquafina gets a disguise where she tries to dress up like a dude, and it relies on like a lot of like Paul Feig's improv here from the actors, and at one point, like John Cena's character is like his whole running bit is that he's all into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and at one point he fights to turtle power during one fight scene, which I wish I could like it. I wish that, because I'm sure like the clip of that has been circulating online. A lot of people saying, "Oh, that's actually pretty funny," but there isn't a lot of that in the film. Like a lot of it just comes off like just minor references to turtles. We're like, "Oh, you remember the Ninja Turtles? I was really big in Ninja Turtles. Let's highlight this Ninja Turtles song," and not really play into much of it. And you think like a better script would have had more funny things to do with that. Like you could have had like John Cena like debate people on what's the best turtle movie, or why the cartoon was superior, or why people forget it's comic. Anything you could draw from, instead of just relying on like this. It almost kind of feels like improv, where like the actors weren't in on the bit, where it just feels like they're trying to pull off an episode of Whose Line Is It Anyway, where they're just like, okay, John Cena, you're really big in Ninja Turtles. Be big in Ninja Turtles. Like, improv a scene really quick. And it's just like, and that's been one of those aspects of like Paul Feig's films that I've kind of grown irritated on, where he just relies on the improv to carry a lot of the film, and kind of hope that it'll fill in like the cracks of the screenplay. And in some cases, it kind of does. Like I felt like it did work for like kind of like with Bridesmaids. It definitely worked for Spy, and and honestly, like I went back and watched like the director's cut of the Ghostbusters film that he did, and the few deleted scenes where actually did rely on a little bit of improv, it kind of worked. So I can understand why he thinks like that's his big weapon in his arsenal, but it can't make up for like the rest of this film. And there is a lot of improv, like as you've probably seen a lot of Paul Feig films, at the end of the film he does show all the alternative takes that they do with all the improv lines, and you know, usually show that because like you think they're funny, but honestly you can understand why these ones weren't chosen, because they're really not that funny. Not to mention like just wasted potential with all the resources here. You have Bobby Lee as like a social media commentator, does nothing with him. Sean William Scott plays like kind of a bit of a red herring character. You think there's something funny you could do with him, not a lot that they do. And then probably like the weirdest one is they have like what was that? Murray Hill plays Johnny Graham, like this eccentric, you know, guy who hands out checks, who's tried to look like Ed McMahon and pull off this Ed McMahon impression. I thought, you got to do something more with this character. He's all flashy. You got him in like this big gimmick, and he's all loud, and he's got these sparkling suits. He's running around with checks and sunglasses, and he's appearing on billboards. It's like they don't do much with anyone in this film. I feel like there was more thought put into the action sequences in this film than anything else, because the action sequences they're okay on like an assembly level, but like they're trying to go for laughs, and the few times they do try to inject some humor between the punches and the car chases and the gunfire, they're really not that funny. They all fall flat, and especially, like I said, wasted potential. One of the biggest wasted moments for like a fight scene here is there's a fight that takes place between Aquafina and two other people in a wax museum. So you think, you know, you could have some fun with like, you know, all the different wax figures and make references to celebrities. There's like one reference that they make about the Kardashians, and it's really not that funny. It's just like oh, I thought these were I even forgot the joke. It's not that funny. That's how memorable this film is. Not to mention like the whole, like, you know, it feels like this film should be making some comment on how people have been forced to kill each other for money because times are that tough, but it doesn't. It's just like, well, this is the world we live in. It sucks, but what are you gonna do? Even the film outright admits in the beginning with like the opening prologue, which is supposed to be kind of funny, which is to say, like the prologue sets up like people oppose this, but those people are no fun, and it's like, well, it kind of feels like the film is telling the audience, like, well, if you don't find the concept of a lottery where people kill each other fun, and just accept that it will continue by the end of the film without a hint of satire within there, it just comes off awful. It left a nasty taste in my mouth. I had to go back and watch Spy after this, just to remind me that Paul Feig can still do good comedies, but we're so far away from them. So yeah, I was hoping for Spy, and with Jackpot, I came up with nothing. It's not a good film. It's probably the worst Paul Feig film that I've seen, which sucks to say. Like, and like a lot of his films have been kind of lukewarm, where I'd say like, oh well, this one wasn't really that good. Like, it wasn't terrible, but it was a bit off the mark, or like the humor just wasn't working here. I despise Jackpot. This is definitely the worst film that he has made, both like thematically, both for how it tries to force character chemistry, and how the improv and jokes just don't hit. Like, it's just dud after dud after dud. And just like this limp film that feels like it has nothing to say about dystopian class divide while wielding it for jokes. So yeah, Jackpot sucks. So, if you want to brave Jackpot, it's on Prime Video. I'm so sorry, Scorn, if you wanted to see Jackpot. Feig is quite the hack. I can't see him making a good movie ever again. It's hard to now. It really is hard to now, because like there are parts of like The Heat that I kind of dug, and Spy is fun. And what was like he did one before this? Was it like it was that Christmas one? What was that one he did before that? It was Last Christmas, which was okay. It's not the worst thing. It wasn't as limp as like a Simple Favor. Simple Favor is just ugh. I could not get into that one. Yeah, I haven't seen the School for Good and Evil. Just because I think that was off my radar. I might have to watch that just to see if because that's like the most recent one he made before Jackpot. So I guess I have to see that to see if Feig has anything. Unless like I don't know. Maybe I don't. Maybe I don't want to be disappointed. By his work on that. What else? He's working on a sequel to A Simple Favor. Okay. All right. Well, God, that sucks. Yeah. I don't know. I don't. If this is what Feig considers comedy now, I don't know. I was even willing to like. I know for a lot of people, the line they drew was like with Ghostbusters, but like, people were really overreacting to Ghostbusters. I didn't like Ghostbusters, but honestly, the only problem I had is just like the theatrical cut was just like it was cut up, and a lot of the jokes just didn't land. Some of the improv was I did like Chris Hemsworth's improv. Like, it was dumb, but he was trying to be dumb, and he played it up with a straight face the whole time, and he didn't stammer as much with jokes. So I thought that's fine. I didn't like the film as a whole, but like in terms of like the presentation, I kind of dug some aspects of it, and Hemsworth was fine. I did watch the director's cut. The musical sequence was pretty cute. Yeah, I have a little bit more admiration for Ghostbusters after watching the director's cut. I still don't like it, but it's fine. It's not as bad as Afterlife. Afterlife is definitely the worst Ghostbusters film I have ever seen. Let's see. So far, my worst of the list has ISS on it. You ever seen it? Oh, ISS? ISS I thought was alright. The International Space Station horror film. I thought aspects with it were alright. I felt like it kind of petered out towards the end, but it had some decent tension in it. It's definitely not the worst film of the year. I can tell you some films that were much worse than that. Like I'm assuming you probably haven't seen too many films, because like if ISS is the worst film you've seen this year, you got off lucky, man. You got off lucky. Let's see. The best thing, this is from Sucked. The best thing Paul Feig has ever done was Freaks and Geeks, in my opinion. I think that was probably him at his height. I would think, like in terms of like his best work, including television, sure, yeah, Freaks and Geeks. But film wise, I would say Spy. Spy is a film I still love going back to and watching. Oh, especially Jason Statham. Jason Statham is so much fun in Spy. Oh my god. Gotta remind myself that he can make good films. He might not ever again. Like, it might be a Robert Zemeckis situation, but just gotta remind myself of that. Yeah, I was trying to think, what were some like other much worse films this year? Like, there were some smaller films I saw that were much worse. Like, there's this really terrible film called I Can't Breathe, which tried to put this Christian angle on trying to excuse police brutality. So, gross. Let me see. What were some really terrible? Like, Despicable Me, I really hated, just because like it's resting on its laurels. Unfrosted is obviously really terrible one. The Pop-Tarts movie. It's gross. And then, just like the typical like Netflix ones that have been terrible, like The Union, and it was like a Trigger Warning, and I don't know, like what was that other one for you? Was it Lift? The plane heist one with Kevin Hart? Yeah, that wasn't good. Am I excited for Here? Kind. A bit on the fence, yeah. Let's see, from Scorn, yeah, I don't watch a lot, or try not to, but most of my list was just boring, nothing anger inducing. Okay, that's fair. Don't have to go out and see everything, whatever you can get out and see, even I have, my limits of how much. Like I said, I still haven't seen Longlegs yet. And I want to see Longlegs. I also haven't seen The Crow and Borderlands, but like I said, we didn't get screeners. We didn't get them. Okay, so we've come to the end here, so let's do a quick recap of the films we reviewed on today's show. We reviewed Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. It's a decent sequel. It leans into Tim Burton's best elements. It has some great practical effects, and it still has a little bit of that dark charm, and Michael Keaton still has his touch as Beetlejuice. Not a great, but a pretty good sequel. It's a fairly fun time. Same goes for Alien Romulus. It doesn't play off a lot of the philosophical elements that came up with Alien Covenant and Prometheus, but if you loved Alien and Aliens, and you love a ragtag group fighting back against the corporate elites and having some psychosexual elements and just having the run and gun elements of blood and gore and aliens ripping people to shreds, Romulus does get the job done pretty well. I also reviewed Rebel Ridge, a new action thriller on Netflix. And I know that Netflix has a lot of action thrillers, but trust me, this is going to be the one that you're going to want to watch. It's by the director Sun Ye behind Green Room. And if you love Green Room, you're going to love Rebel Ridge. I also reviewed Daughters, the documentary about the daddy-daughter dance in prison. Absolutely heartbreaking and essential viewing for highlighting the prison system and families who are struggling to make ends meet amid a corrupt system. And then I reviewed Jackpot, Paul Feig's dystopian film that tries to evoke comedy from people dying while they're desperate for money, and it just doesn't work. It falls flat and relies on a lot of improv to carry a film with a lot of action scenes and a theme that doesn't work and a message that is just putrid by the end. So yeah, definitely wouldn't recommend that. So among all those films I would recommend, I would say Daughters is definitely essential viewing. I think it's definitely going to be up this year as a top contender for Best Documentary at the Academy Awards. So I would say check out that. But also, if you just want to have fun at the theater this weekend, you can't go wrong with Alien Romulus or Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Like I said, not great, essential, must-watch sequels, but if you just want a fun time with some familiar settings and visuals and horror elements, both films are a pretty good choice. So, and if you are just staying in, like I said, you can watch Daughters, or if you just want like a very moody and gritty thriller, Rebel Ridge is a good choice as well. After Beetlejuice, I'm looking forward to The Kills. Oh, yeah. I have not seen that yet, and I'm hoping to. I'm hoping it's good. The trailers are good. There's a lot of September films just kind of like sneaking in there. So I'm going to try to cover that. But yeah, what do we got coming up in the next few weeks? Well, I'm going to be seeing quite a few films, which I might be reviewing by the end of September. We'll see how things work out. But I'm definitely going to be seeing, for sure, what I'm going to be seeing are Speak No Evil, which I know a lot of people have been complaining about. There's been like a lot of trailers for it. I'm going to see My Old Ass, which is kind of a quirky concept I'm looking forward to. And The Wild Robot, coming out at the end of September, an original animated film about a robot exploring nature. And a possible, maybe, I don't know if the screening is confirmed yet, but a possible early review might be Transformers 1, which is coming out later this September, which I think we have a screener coming up for it. I'll have to double check. But yeah, eventually, sometime either at the end of this month or next month, I will get back to reviewing more of those films. If you'd like to read some reviews for the movies that I talked about here, you can check out movieswithmark.com to catch all of them. And you can catch my other reviews at filminquiry.com and twincitiesgeek.com. Also be sure to check out the Patreon. I've got some exclusive writing up there as well, especially on Saturday morning cartoons from the book that I am currently writing, and I am adding new chapters there at not quite daily, but like at least like 2 every time that I do upload it. So I'm covering a lot of ground there. We're currently up to the 1990s, so if you want to keep up with that, you can go to there. So if you want to stay up to date on the latest movies, and there's going to be an onslaught of them coming this fall, be sure to subscribe to this channel to keep up to date, and you're going to want to, because we're going to be talking about a lot of films coming up this award season, and there's a lot of, I'm not gonna lie, there's a lot on my plate coming up here, and I'm looking at like off to the side here is where I would usually keep my screener pile, but right now I've just got like some press notes and stuff like that, and they're a little bit high, so there's a lot coming down the pike in the next few months here, so be sure to stay tuned for all that. So I will be back in a few weeks to do more reviews. So until next time, have a good one, everybody.